Hi, this is Reza. Today we're going to have a look at Lean Canvas. But before we begin, we're going to find out why it is important for a business, particularly for startup. As we all know, we live in the age of innovation. With the internet, high technology computer, and open source software, the cost of building a product is at all-time low. But building a successful startups haven't much improved. Most of the startups still fail, but there is an interesting fact that most successful startups they keep changing their plans along the way. So, this is all about, and the question is how to systematically changing the plan until you find the plan that works before running out of resources. This process called running lean. Lean here simply means agile, or doing fast iteration for learning and growing. It's about speed, learning, and focus. Testing a vision by measuring how customers behave. As Moria with the book Running Lean iterate from plan A to plan that works, explain there are three steps the essence of running lean can be distilled. The first one is you have to document your plan A. This step is where we are going to talk about more. This process is about what and how to make lean canvas. The second one is identifying the riskiest part of the plan. Because startup goes through three stages: problem solution fit, problem market fit, and scale. So, it is important to know the risk first before de-risking it over time. The last step is systematically testing the plan. There is no way to de-risking the plan other than testing it. So, systematic experiments have an important role of running lean. Even this sounds promising, there is no methodology can guarantee success. But a good methodology can provide a feedback loop for continuous improvement and learning. Now we are going to talk about Lean Canvas. To successfully launch our product, we have to absorb the best approaches to business ideas validation, and Lean Canvas is one of them. So what is Lean Canvas? Lean Canvas is a tool designed by Ash Moria to help startups analyze the strengths and weaknesses of their business model. Lean Canvas also helps startups to outline the business model and validate the core business elements before starting to build a product. Ashmoria adapted the business model canvas of Alexander Osterwalder, which he described in the book Business Model Generation. The reason he liked the one-page canvas format is because it's fast, comparing to writing a business plan which can take several weeks or months. We can outline multiple business models on the canvas in one afternoon. It also concise, because the canvas forces us to pick our words carefully and get the point. And it also portable. And it's much easier to share with people, which means it will be read by more people and probably will be more frequently updated. If you have ever written a business plan, you might immediately recognize most of the building blocks on the canvas. The Lean Canvas is the perfect format for brainstorming possible business models, prioritizing where to start, and tracking ongoing learning. A couple of things before we get started here is that we never write on the Lean Canvas, but instead we use post-it notes. So, that's for a few different reasons. One of those is that we can be continuously changing the model based on the data that we have. So if we believe that our customer segment is particular demographic and we go contact that particular customer and find them and realize that they don't have a need for our product, then we can change that really easily as opposed to the whole new canvas. Psychologically also, if something isn't said at all, I found out people have less of tendency to get really devoted to the idea that we kind of get married to the concept that we have, and point here is to use it as a tool to help validate the models So, validate how we intend to identify, capture, and deliver value. So, maybe we have a question like, why a lean canvas? Because as we know that lean canvas is a popular tool that has been used to articulate the business model. The business model for a company is simply a way to describing how the organization make money or specifically find how organization intend to identify, capture, and deliver value to customers. So, popular tool that has been created several years ago to help articulate how a company tends to do that is what we call business model canvas, which is created by Alexander Osterwalder in the book that I mentioned earlier. It's a really helpful book in understanding all the different way the businesses can provide value to customers. The problem with that particular model is on a startup level, it's not necessarily fully applicable. So, some of the building blocks may not apply for startup until they operating in an established capacity and have already proven that they have a valid model and they are providing solution for a particular problem. So, for startups, they tend to use the lean canvas, which is simply a way to map out the business model so that they can get a look each of the 9 building blocks and then they can make change in attempt to validate the model. The best way to illustrate the use of the canvas is through an example. In this case, I will use Google for example using this methodology. In terms of popularity and global adoption, Google is number one company. What started as an advanced web search engine is now a multinational giant that is specialized in online advertising, cloud computing, software hardware products, and many others. Before we start sketching the canvas, as Maury suggests us to use what we call customer-centric approach. What that means is that a model should start with the customer and everything else should fall in line with them. The reason is because until we have an idea of who we're serving, we have no way to identify what their problems are, what their pain is, and of course developing a solution. Also, we should sketch a canvas in one sitting. What that means is, while it's tempting to iterate endlessly in a whiteboard, the initial canvas should be sketched quickly, in less than 15 minutes. The point of creating the canvas is to take a snapshot of what's in our head at this moment in time, then move on to identifying what's the riskiest, and finally get out of the building and test the model with people other than ourselves. It's okay to leave sections blank rather than trying to research or debate right answer. Put something down or leave it blank. Leaving a section blank might be indicative of what really risky is about the model and the place to start the testing. The canvas is meant to be an organic document that evolves with time. So over here on this right box, we're gonna start on what we call a customer segment. And with customer segment, again, we are trying to articulate who it is that we serve. We are trying to determine what are the commonalities. So we really want to try to be as clear as possible in this particular area because the more that we know about the customer, the more that we know what essentially problem they have, then we can develop a creative solution for those problems. The case of Google, back at the time, their customer were all web users. In particular, the early adopters were Stanford students. This is because Sergey Brin and Larry Page were PhD students at Stanford back then. They could easily reach their early adopters and test their business idea. Now the next area, once we have the customer in mind, is we need to develop and determine what the problem is, and there can be more than one problems. Along the way, we might find that the problem and customer segment are related to each other, and this pair usually drives the rest of the canvas, which is why to tackle them together. For the customer segment that we are working with, describe the top 1 to 2 or 3 problems that need solved. Another way to think about problems is in terms of the job customer need done. Clayton Christensen once said, when people need to get a job done, they hire a product or service to do it for them. The marketer's task is to understand what jobs periodically arise in customers' lives for which they might hire products the company could make. We wanna look into environment to see what are some of the opportunities that we have here. We know that we tend to focus on ourselves on developing the product ourselves. What the problem is, we need to determine if there is a customer presence problem. Now, for the Google case example, the key problems were related to the complication to find what you would be searching for, and also irrelevant search results generated by other search engines. As Moria also suggests us to list the existing alternative on how the early adopters address these problems today. Unless we're solving a brand new problem, most of the problem has existing solution. Many times this solution may not be from an obvious competitor. As an example, Sergey and Larry found gap in Excite, Yahoo, and AltaVista. They analyzed them and had a chance to build a more advanced search engine. Now, once we determine the problems, or rather, then we need to articulate what the solution for those problems are. So here what we're gonna do is we want to identify the features of about our product or service that are going to tackle the problems that we identify in the prior blocks. And so these are features, specific attributes or characteristic about the product or service. And we want to be as specific as possible. When we are filling out the canvas, we better not to take a lot of time because truthfully, whatever we put in, this is probably going to be wrong until we actually validate it. Because all we have are untested problems, it is fairly common for them to get reprioritized or completely replaced with new ones after just a few tests. As for example here, the founders of Google strive to improve upon their idea. They wanted to build a reliable, comprehensive, and speedy search engine that would help users to find relevant content. So this goes to the solution block. So now we have solution in place, at least what we believe to be a solution for a problem. Then we are going to go ahead and determine what is the unique value proposition is. And the unique value proposition simply articulates two things, and they are really related about how we are different and why are we worth buying. As Moria defined the definition of the unique value proposition as why you're different and worth getting attention. Selling is a conversation and it's too hard to do that with a single statement. More important, the first isn't even selling, it's getting a prospect's attention. Even with this definition, the unique value proposition is still hard to get right because we have to distill the essence of our product in a few words that can fit in the headline of our landing page. Additionally, our unique value proposition also needs to be different, and that different needs to matter. The good news is we don't have to get this perfect right away. Like everything on the canvas, we start with the best guess and iterate from there. This is the center of the lean canvas. This is one of the most important boxes on the canvas and also the hardest to get right. So we want to explain really as brief as possible. That's why we're going to enjoy using canvases because they force people to be brief and not write up these huge long of reports. But how are we different and why are we worth buying? Why is it that the customer gonna go with us? What do we offer? Is it some kind of convenience? Is it accessibility? Is it some kind of security on a basic fundamental level? Why would somebody want to purchase our products or services versus someone else? As for example, with the case of Google, taking all the prior problems and solutions, Google's unique value proposition was about helping users to find what they're looking for fast. As Mori also suggests us to articulate the high concept pitch or high level concept. High level concepts are used heavily by Hollywood producer to distill the general plot of the movie to a memorable soundbite. The high level concept should not be confused with the unique value proposition and is not intended to be used on our landing page. There is a danger that the concept the pitch is based on may be unfamiliar to the audience. For the case of Google here, the high level concept of Google was about the fast web search based on the relevancy of the web page. Now that we've articulated the unique value proposition, we are gonna determine our channels, and this is essentially how we're going to basically sell to customers. Failing to build a significant path to customers is among the top reasons why startups fail. So we'll look at first party versus third party channels, direct versus indirect, and also how we communicate with customer. How do we raise awareness for the thing that we do? How do we allow people to evaluate our products? Obviously, distributing them is really important. It's what we often think of when we think the word channel. And how do we get feedback from the customer? This is very, very important point. We are gonna make sure that we have some type of mechanism in place so we can get feedback from customer to determine what we're doing right and what we need to improve. The initial goal of startup is to learn, not to scale. So at first it's okay to rely on any channels that get us in front of potential customers. It is equally important to think about our scalable channel from day one so that we may start building and testing them early. While there are a lot of channel options available, some channels might be outright inapplicable to our startup, while others may be more viable during later stage of our startup. In case of Google, their main marketing channel back then was user reference. It was important to get first user attention and love to make them share information about the new search engine. The next building block is gonna be what we call a revenue streams, and the revenue stream is essentially how we actually going to make money. So we need to explain in what capacity we specifically do what we do, just some kind of sales model when we are physical ownership of something and we are selling it to somebody else like a retailer or manufacturer, or we gonna do some subscription type model, or we gonna do some type of licensing deal, or obviously there are a lot of other revenue stream that we can develop. We can go do the advertising, we can do freemium model. Those are very, very common source of revenue. The key thing here is thinking about as many revenue streams as we can possibly generate for our product. We don't want to be relying on simply one source of revenue stream, but we want to have a variety of complementary stream of income. so that obviously we are not entirely dependent only upon one for a bulk of our revenue. Rather than thinking in terms of 3 or 5 year forecasts, take a more ground-up approach. First, model the runway we will need to define, build, and launch our minimum viable product, then revise after we get there. For Google, key revenue streams back then were related to advertising and investment. Today, there are multiple revenue streams of Google. It helps the company to become the top of the market. Now, of course, we know that when there is a revenue, we also have costs, and we need to consider our cost structures. So we are gonna determine what are our most significant costs, or what we call cost driver. So if we are heavy in manufacture, then we are obviously gonna take a look at those upfront costs, those some costs we have infrastructure, equipment, and obviously it's scalable, but we include all the costs at the beginning. Or if you're a service company, then our predominant share of cost is gonna be labors. So we're gonna outline what is that looks like and have a detailed plan on if we're gonna be able to break even. For Google, hosting and development are the outlines of their main spendings. Although it's hard to accurately calculate these too far in the future, instead we can focus on the present, such as what will it cost us to interview 30 to 50 customers, what will it cost us to build and launch the minimum viable product, or what will our ongoing burn rate look like in terms of both fixed and variable costs. Use the revenue stream and cost structure input to calculate the break-even point and estimate how much time, money, and effort we need to get there. We will use this later to prioritize which model we start with. Now we are going close to the end. So there is two more that we going to look out here. The first one, or probably the second to last, I should say, is gonna be what we call our key metrics. This is specifically to the Lean Canvas. You notice that in business model canvas, this is what we call maybe key resources. Key metric is simply how we are going to evaluate the progress of our company. And this is extremely important because we need some type of benchmark in place to evaluate the success of what we're doing. Is our model working, or do we need pivot, or do we need to change the model in some way? So metrics are important. They need to be specific to the model. The important is that the metric lead to the success of our company. Norm Brodsky and Bo Burlingham said, find a key number that tells you how your business is doing in real time before you get the sales report. Every business has a few key numbers that can be used to measure how well it is performing. These numbers are key for both measuring progress and identifying hotspots in our customer life cycle. We can use the model of Dave McClure's Parrot metrics, which are acquisition, or how do user find us, then activation, do user have a great first experience, and retention, do user come back, or revenue, how do you make money, or even referrals, do users tell others. Even though Pirate Metrics was built with software companies in mind, the model is applicable to many different types of business. We can use any type of measurement we think it fits our company. As for example, for Google, to evaluate success, Google founders might have used number of search requests and the percentage of people who end their search on the first page. So we need to add these two to the key metrics block. The last we're going to look at, the reason this is going to be the last is because some people don't really know what it is at first. This is called an unfair advantage. This is something that unique to the company and can't be easily copied. This is important because this is the model, and the question is, can anyone operate the same model relatively easily? So we are looking at things like pattern, we are looking at potentially connection or network or licensing agreements, things that would exclude other people from be able to operate our particular business model. So we are looking at something that we have that other people don't, that would lead to the company to be more successful operating this business. As for example of Google, the synergy of their collaboration resulted in the PageRank algorithm, a combined citation ranking system. This was the unfair advantage of Google. Most founders list things as their unfair advantage that really are not, such as passion, line of code, or features. Another frequently cited unfair advantage in business model is the first mover advantage. However, it doesn't take much to see that being first can actually be a disadvantage, only to be potentially picked up later by the fast followers unless we'll be able to constantly outpace them with the real unfair advantage. Here's some example of real unfair advantage that fit the definition, like insider information, the right expert endorsement, a dream team, personal authority, large network effects, community, existing customer, or CEO ranking. This is our example of lead canvas for Google. If Google was founded today, they would appear in a totally different market with different user and different customer problems. In this case, lead canvas would be great help thanks to its flexibility, adaptability, and more important, the ability to continuously get updated. With all of this documented, now we are ready to systematically test the plan. In the lean startup, this is done by running a series of experiments. The lean startup methodology is strongly rooted in the scientific method, and running experiments is the key activity. The fastest way to learn is to talk to customers, not releasing code or collecting analytics, but talking to people. The principle of two-phase validation is first qualitative, then quantitative. The customer interview is a form of qualitative validation that is quite effective in uncovering strong signals for or against hypotheses using a reasonably small sample size. Once we have preliminary validation on our hypothesis, we can then use what we have learned to craft a survey and verify our findings quantitatively. The goal is no longer learning, but demonstrating scalability of the result. Another thing that I want to address is this is not a replacement for writing a business plan when we are seeking funding. This is simply a helpful tool to get the feel of what our model is and ultimately how we can change that model depending at what customers feedback that we got from the market. We can change who our customer is, we can change the solution, we can change the revenue stream, but having it map out is a great starting point so we can determine where to make those changes. Hope this all clear. Thank you very much for watching.